Hello, Bob.
Hi, Namaskar.
Namaskar.
How are you? All right?
I'm fine.
Good.
Shall we start?
Whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Yeah, we are ready.
Good.
Epilogue News Network is delighted to have the United Kingdom Member Parliament from Harrow East, Mr. Bob Blackman, with us for this interaction. Mr. Bob Blackman, welcome to Epilogue News Network.
Namaskar. A great pleasure to be with you and with all your viewers.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Blackman represents Harrow East since 2010 and has been subsequently re-elected in 2015, 17 and 19. It is pertinent to mention that Mr. Bob Blackman is the recipient of Padamshree on Distinguished Service in Public Affairs in year 2020. Padamshree Bob Blackman is a trusted friend of India and is very vocal about the issues pertaining to India's position globally over various issues. He is specifically concerned about the plight of exiled Kashmiri Hindus and victims of genocide living in dilapidated condition. He has visited exiled Kashmiri Hindus living in camps at various locations in Jammu and Delhi and has maintained a very close coordination with many community organizations and individuals. Bob is credited with a move of tabling an early day motion in commemoration of Kashmiri Pandits Balidan Divas on 14 September 2020 in United Kingdom Parliament and has urged in his motion Government of India to bring in genocide prevention and punishment legislation. We once again welcome Mr. Bob Blackman to this interaction. Bob, what is the purpose of this motion?
Well, just so your listeners, viewers understand, the position is that early day motions in Parliament are an expression of opinions by members of Parliament on particular topical issues. It doesn't lead to a debate in Parliament. I think we want to be clear. It doesn't mean to say that there will be a detailed debate on the issue. Far from it. What it enables MPs to do is to register their opinion and to register their views on particular topics. Not all members of Parliament sign early day motions. Many, of course, don't because they take a stance that they won't sign any early day motions on anything, even though they may support the principle. Members of the government, for example, and opposition front benches don't sign early day motions because they can either be in contradiction or they may prejudice the position of the government of the day. So from that perspective, we have to put it in context. But it is an important issue that I use the prospect of an early day motion to just lay down in Parliament in the United Kingdom the feelings of the Kashmiri Pandits in this particular instance on what needs to happen. I have been championing this cause for more than 30 years, both outside Parliament and now inside Parliament, because it's one of those areas that I feel very passionately about. As you quite rightly say, I have visited at first hand to see the plight of Kashmiri Pandits who are refugees either in Jammu or elsewhere in India. And it is heartbreaking to see what has happened to those individuals. That in many ways, they were the backbone of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in the Kashmiri Valley, where they were the entrepreneurs, they were the teachers, they were the professionals, and they provided and enabled the people of the valley to actually fulfill their potential. And very sadly, due to the attempted genocide on them, they were forced to leave their ancestral homes. And I think that's terribly sad. It is part and parcel of the longer term issues in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And I promote the view, and for your viewers, I'll just repeat it. The entirety of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. And therefore the illegally occupied part of Jammu and Kashmir, which has Pakistani troops and other Pakistani elements within it, that whole territory should be part of India, still remains part of sovereign India, and should be returned in that way, so that we can actually restore peace, tranquility, and security to the valley. And of course, whilst I'm on the subject, that's part of Ladakh that is occupied by the Chinese should also be liberated again as well. So this is a long-standing position that I have, and I think it is not for the United Kingdom government to interfere in the sovereign affairs of India. Far from it. I take the view of saying, supposing the Indian Parliament decided to debate an issue on Brexit, Britain leaving the European Union, I think we'd all be up in arms saying, well, what's the Indian Parliament got to do that with us? But I do think it's an opportunity for UK parliamentarians to express a view in support of the Indian government and their internal affairs, which I think is important. It's important that we express a view on a number of world affairs, which we routinely do, about peoples that have been forced to leave ancestral homes because of conflicts or because of attempted genocide or some form of dispersal.
What do you expect to achieve, or what should the exiled community expect to achieve from this motion?
Well, I think the fact that we're having this conversation today demonstrates why this sort of activity is so important, because what it does is generate interest and debate around the topic, and therefore, instead of it being something that's forgotten about, it's remembered. I mean, this is not by no means the first early day motion that I put down about the topic. I have raised this issue over the Kashmiri Pandits, the Dogra community and others on frequent occasions in Parliament, obviously recognising the dreadful days when the forced genocide took place, and we will continue to do that, because what it does is bring to the attention of the UK Parliament, bring to the attention of parliamentarians the subject matter. I also say that the Indian diaspora in the UK has to be far more proactive on this. They must contact their members of parliament and say, this is an important issue for us. This is part and parcel. We're British, we're proud of being British, but actually this is part of our history. And at the time in this world now, when there's a review of history taking place about certain issues, this is one of those areas where the review of history has to be complete, and we have to actually go back and say, this was a wrong done to people, and we need to put it right. So therefore, it's not for me to tell the Indian government what they should do, far from it. But as you quite rightly say, the President of India has honoured me with being the first Padamshree who is of non-Indian origin. Though many of my constituents and friends regard me as being more Indian than Indians in many cases. But they've honoured me in that way, and unfortunately, one of my sadnesses is that the COVID-19 pandemic has meant that I've not been able to travel to Delhi to receive the official award from the President because the ceremony had to be cancelled because of the lockdown. Right. And my sympathies, of course, to everyone in India who is suffering from the pandemic at the moment. And I wish every success in combating that. We in the UK have got real problems with this pandemic still, but nowhere near the proportions of suffering that is going on in India right now. So, my sympathies for everyone who's affected in various different guises, whether it's health-wise or economically. So it's very sad. So I haven't been able to travel, but I'm looking forward to eventually having the ceremony and meeting many of my friends over in India to celebrate.
Bob, how should democracies respond to the rise of fundamentalism that thrives by availing the rights and freedoms to ultimately subvert these sacrosanct principles?
I think openness, transparency and debate are the best way of bringing out these evil people who wish to use terrorism or force to achieve their ends. I mean, one of the issues often is we have this constant, I think, battle over, and it's particularly true now, of people trying to silence people. Actually, silencing people doesn't stop them thinking about these things. And in fact, it creates a sort of feeling of having been silenced, that it's a form of repression, which is unnecessary. I think actually bringing people out into the open, debating the issues overtly, and pointing out where people are wrong, and having what we in the West would call liberal democracy. Who am I to talk about liberal democracy when India is the largest democracy in the world? But I think the key here is that actually India is surrounded by countries where either there's lip service put to democracy, or I'm afraid democracy doesn't exist. And in certain places, we see that in not necessarily in the Indian subcontinent, but elsewhere close by to India. So I think from that perspective, what we have to do is, democracy, if nothing else, is the battle of ideas. It's the dialogue. It's debating these issues, and understanding that you're not always going to be right. You don't have a monopoly on good ideas all the time. But unless you engage in that debate and point out the error of people's ways, then actually all you're going to do is repress people because you want to do so by force. And I think that the ultimate answer to people that attempt to use force to deliver what they want to achieve by terror or by other means actually is detrimental to their own cause. But equally, if their cause is worthwhile, then they should be willing to argue their case in a proper footing and listen to the counter arguments as well. And I think this is one of the problems that people have who become terrorists or get involved in that. Often the terrorists involved are the pawns, if you like, and it is the movers and shakers behind those people that are attempting to seize power, not by the ballot box, but literally by forcing other people to kowtow to what they want. And very sadly, we're seeing across the world right now a sort of view of, if you've got views that run counter to what may be considered to be the mainstream, we want to cancel you. We want to stop you speaking. But that is completely wrong. I think you answer these with speaking out about things, and sometimes you'll be the minority. You have to accept the fact that minorities have a right to have their say, and if they can't have their say, then that's repression of free speech, which is no good to anyone at all.
Do you think that the liberal democracies realized that erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir enjoyed the maximum constitutional autonomy, and despite being empowered arbitrarily, genocide was unleashed on a minuscule minority? Yeah. Do you understand the implication of such an act such acts has for the global democratic order?
Yes, I think the problem is that if you posed a question to most people of where is the state of Jammu and Kashmir on the map, most people would say, well, I think it's about here somewhere. They would struggle to identify exactly where it is. There is also widespread ignorance over the geography of the state, and indeed the way that the state was created in the first place, and indeed where the late Maharaja decided, for good reasons, back in 1947, that the whole of the princely state should be ceded to India. And then, of course, it had a special place in the constitution on a so-called temporary basis. I mean, a temporary basis that lasted 70 years I mean, I suppose temporary in the history of the world is fair enough, but temporary in modern day society is 70 years is a lifetime, literally. So I think from that perspective, people have distorted views. And unfortunately, what has also happened, if I may, the application of Article 370 and the other amendments to the Constitution, which were set up as temporary measures for Jammu and Kashmir, I'm afraid they were prejudiced against minority parts of the state in a totally unfair way. And if we said to people, I mean, if you said to people in the West now that if a woman inherited land and then had the in the UK, say, had the temerity then to marry a foreigner, they would then lose their property rights. You can imagine the outcry there would be. Yes. But that's the position we had in Jammu and Kashmir before the abrogation of Article 370. The preservation of things that we count now as just being normal in terms of respect of minority communities across the world were of course suppressed under those articles. So when we challenge this, people say, well, of course we agree that's outrageous. That was allowed to happen and continue. But what they don't realise is that by removing those special provisions, that the Jammu and Kashmir then has been brought under the rest of the constitution of India, so that everyone's rights are preserved. And I think this is the key, that there's widespread ignorance about what the Indian government has done and their motivations for doing it. And I think that's something that we have to expose to the world, because I'm afraid the opponents that we have in the United Kingdom on this are often very ignorant of the position and would want to have a position whereby the majority of people from Kashmir would obviously dictate to the minorities. Well, I'm sorry, in this day and age, that is an unacceptable way forward. And to have a position whereby there's preserved positions for people because of their religion is unacceptable. I mean, India is, of course, a secular state in the same way as many other states around the world. And therefore, people should be able to reach their full potential, not based on their race, religion, or particular caste, but actually making sure that they have equal opportunities to fulfil their potential. And I think that's the sort of thing that we should be saying right around the world. Once again, I come back to what would happen in the UK if we had a position whereby you could only be a member of the government if you're a member of the Church of England. I mean, there'd be absolute uproar. Quite rightly, there'd be uproar. But so we would never have that position now. And I think that's what we have to explain to people about what is being done and why it's being done, and the opportunities which I think your news network is exposing. The opportunities of creating smart cities in Jammu and Kashmir, of giving education and jobs to people. That is, I think, the key to the future prosperity for everyone, irrespective of their background, or their religion or caste. And I think that is the way forward. I think the Indian government has got this absolute right to drive this agenda forward, because I think I'm the last serving Member of Parliament to actually visit Srinagar at first hand, and I saw the opportunities there are for the economy. It's probably, apart from the beauty of the valley, the thing that gave me greatest hope was the fact that business people from all religions were coming together and saying, look, the opportunities for tourism, for culture, for handicrafts, for hydroelectric power arrangements, you name it, the agricultural goods being exported. All these things are there as opportunities, if only there is security in the valley. And what I think people need to understand is that if there is security, their life chances will expand tremendously. And it's using that opportunity and getting away from the dictums of the past, I think.
Don't you think religion-based identity politics is dangerous for the democratic societies? And how can democratic states prevent arbitrary use of rights?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we should be in a position whereby equality of opportunity exists, regardless of race, religion, and other race, religion, sexuality, and so on. I mean, we should be in a position whereby someone's religion is a personal thing, but it should not intrude on their life chances. And I think this is the key element. For people that want to exclude others because of their religion, I think we need to stand up and challenge that at first hand, because to me, religion is personal. It is a matter of personal faith in whichever religion you choose to follow. That does not dictate that everyone else has to follow your religion from it. You may want to promote your religion, that's fine, and lots of people do. But I think personal faith is something that is personal, and it should not be used in a way to force people to either follow that religion and therefore not be able to advance their lives economically or in any other guise anywhere in the world. And I think that is the crucial issue for me.
Do you have any message for your brother parliamentarians of India and to Indian people at large?
Well, I've already wished Sri Narendra Modi a very happy 70th birthday yesterday. I think India is very fortunate to have a Prime Minister such as Narendra Modi, who works 18 hours a day and forces his cabinet ministers to work long hours and achieve things. He has, I think, in the short period of time, relatively speaking, that he's been Prime Minister, he's been able to do for India what he did to Gujarat, which is made Gujarat the economic powerhouse of India, is, I think, helping to transform the lives of Indians generally. I think the key message is keep pressing on with economic liberalisation, keep pressing on with setting up a free trade agreement between India and the United Kingdom. India has been trying to do a free trade agreement with the European Union for 23 years unsuccessfully, and we want, because of our historical relationship, to set that up. And on the back of that, then it continues to build on our friendship. We are in the position of being big investors in India. India are big investors in the UK. So that friendship is there. I note that the Indian Parliament is going to be rebuilt, with a brand new building built by Tata. We're going through the same thing to a certain extent of remodelling the UK Parliament, so we know what that's like as a problem. We know COVID-19 is still a key challenge, but I think the key message, I think, for all of them is, look, we must pursue this genocide protection measures. We must bring those laws in to protect all the people of India, and in that, I will voice my strong support for those changes in the law, which I think are long overdue, and to make sure that all people of all religions are protected right across India. So I'm with the government of India on that score. I will continue to support those proposals and continue to look for extended friendship between India and the United Kingdom.
Do you think, without addressing genocide of Kashmiri Pandits, should Kashmiri Pandits return or can return to Kashmir?
Well, I'd love to say. I think the fact is that there has to be a position whereby the Pandits can return if they so choose. There are probably three types of Pandits. So there are those that have been forced to migrate elsewhere into Jammu and Kashmir, maybe to places of safety because of the genocide and the ethnic cleansing that took place. There are those that have moved elsewhere in India for good reason, who may choose to return, they may not. And then there's the Pandits that have dispersed around the world. And for many of those, they will say, well, I'd like to go and visit my ancestral home, but I wouldn't necessarily want to go and live there again because I'm settled somewhere else, and my family is now settled somewhere else, even though my heart is back with my ancestral home. And we understand that, and I think that's absolutely right. People should have the opportunity to return, if they so choose, in safety. I suspect that many will feel very, very nervous about returning. And the people that really have a stake in this are the people that are living in effectively refugee camps in Jammu, elsewhere in Jammu, and will be thinking, well, I'd like to go back because it's not far away, relatively speaking, as long as it's a place of safety. And if the legislation is in place to protect the minority communities, then that will help considerably, I think, and will make actually the possibility of getting a proper settlement between different groups a reality.
Thank you, Mr. Bob Blackman, for consenting to this interaction and being here with us. Your thoughts and understanding of various contemporary issues are genuinely enlightening and surely a way forward. Your support for humanitarian causes in general and particularly in relation to genocide of exiled Kashmiri Hindus is worthy of genuine accolade. Apolognet News Network wishes you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.